Chapter 1571. Ethan was taller than Alexander, who had a more feminine build. The contrast between the two of them was quite strong when they stood next to each other. Ethan was manly and domineering, while Alexander had a softer and more elegant appearance. They were two extremes. Ethan glanced at Alexander calmly and nodded as a greeting. "Ethan, this is my fiancée, Jacqueline Fordham," Alexander introduced. "Hi." Ethan looked at Jacqueline's face and noticed some similarities with Olivia. A hint of nervousness flashed in Jacqueline's eyes. She replied quickly, "Your reputation precedes you." "Really? You know about me?" Ethan's seemingly casual words carried the judgmental tone of a man in power. Especially since he was much taller than Jacqueline, his gaze coming from above was incredibly intimidating. Jacqueline composed herself and replied, "Mr. Miller, your reputation in the business world has spread far and wide. I've heard of you even though I'm in Zelatria. I've been hoping to meet you. I didn't expect us to be connected this way. Honestly, we have much to learn from you when it comes to managing a business. We're going to be a family from now on. Please show us the way and help us in our future endeavors." Jacqueline's reply was bulletproof. There wasn't anything suspicious about it. "We'll see." Ethan shifted his gaze as he followed Wendell away to talk to some other relatives. Jacqueline was finally able to relax. She had just locked eyes with Ethan for a short while, and yet she felt like her back was already covered in sweat. Ethan's gaze was terrifying. She felt like she would have suffocated if he had looked at her for any longer. He was sterner than she imagined, and his presence was very commanding. "Are you okay?" Alexander noticed that her expression was off. Jacqueline wiped the sweat off her forehead. "I'm fine. I'll go help out. A lot more guests have arrived. Don't push yourself too hard." David's funeral was very rushed, but with enough money spent, it still was very grand. A lot of the people who showed up at the funeral felt like David's death came too suddenly. He was a prominent figure who could influence people on either side of the law. Yet he died such a pitiful death in his later years. It was quite undignified. Some people also said it was probably because he did too many evil deeds when he was younger. That was why he didn't even have a son to see him off at his funeral. Most of his offspring were short-lived, too. People loved kicking others when they were down. Very few would actually help out others who were in need. These people were talking smack because they thought the Fordham family had lost their cornerstone. They wouldn't have said such things in the past. Troy was catching his breath behind a tree when he heard these people talk about David. His eyes were filled with hatred. He was born with a silver spoon in his mouth. He had never experienced any bullying and had never been the target of gossip. Everyone around him had always sung his praises. He got everything he wanted and didn't even experience any setbacks when he was pursuing his dream. Only at that very moment, when the Fordham family was in a crisis, did he experience how brutal reality was. Even though the people gossiping would stop talking if he walked out there, it was still pointless. Only someone with authority would be able to end the gossip for good, but he was just a crippled man. As the two people talked, they suddenly saw Troy's face behind the tree. They looked at him awkwardly. "Mr. Fordham, you didn't hear anything, did you? Did you guys say anything?" "Of course not. Our condolences, Mr. Fordham." The two gossipers scurried away. Troy gritted his teeth with all his might. Suddenly, a nonchalant voice rang out next to him. "Troy, it doesn't feel good to be insulted by others, does it?" Chapter 1572. Troy turned around and saw his cousin, Graham Fordham. He hadn't seen him for a few years, and Graham had grown from a young kid to a superstar in the entertainment industry. The two of them had some bad blood between them. Back in the day, Troy spent one whole year making a wood carving of the Mona Lisa. It was a great project that took great effort for him to accomplish. Graham, who was 10 years younger than him, destroyed a part of it when the housekeepers weren't watching out of mischief. His actions caused Troy's work to be incomplete. Troy had planned to take that piece for a competition, so he reprimanded Graham harshly. They were family, but everyone had always felt that David doted on his eldest son the most. The others were less loved. David was angry when he found out about that. He caned Graham and locked him in the private chapel for 3 whole days. That incident sowed the seed of hatred in Graham. Even though Troy later apologized to him, Graham never accepted it. David's siblings, Henley and Emery, got along very well but weren't close with David. The fourth sibling, Sawyer, had it the worst. He was Janice's childhood friend but was abandoned by her in the end. The trauma from his unrealized love for her caused him to stay single since then. He never had any offspring. Troy met Graham's gaze and saw the hint of joy in his eyes. When Grandpa was still alive, he said that our family would only grow stronger if we stood united. If we were divided, we'd fall. Now, the family is in trouble, but you're still able to smile. Graham lowered his head and grabbed Troy's collar. Do you know, I've always hated your family. You guys always have that holier-than-thou attitude. I don't know what lies you all fed Grandpa for him to treat you so well. We're Fordhams too. It's good that he's dead now. The unfair treatment is finally behind us. Troy was furious when he heard what Graham said. You bastard. He was your grandpa too. What the hell are you talking about? Graham sneered. He caned my hands so severely back then and even shut me in the chapel for 3 whole days. How old was I? I was only 7 years old. How could he do that to me? Since he never loved me as his grandson, why would I recognize him as my grandfather? Troy, are you angry? Do you want to hit me? Unfortunately for you, karma has come back to bite you and crippled your hands. Didn't Grandpa used to say that you had the hands of an artist? You had this coming. Troy knew that Graham didn't like him, but he didn't expect Graham to harbor such hatred for him and Douglas. Weren't they family? I didn't want to stay in the Fordham family because of you. I'd rather throw myself into the entertainment industry alone than look at your family's disgusting faces. Graham patted Troy on the cheek. My dear cousin, your family is doomed. We've prepared a nice present for you. Troy felt uneasy. What are you going to do? What am I going to do? Well, you'll soon find out. Troy, this is what you owe me. It's what your father owes the rest of the family. Even if Grandpa is dead now, I want him to watch over us and see the price you're going to pay for his unfair treatment. Troy started to feel afraid. The troubles within the Fordham family were more complicated than he thought. Graham left with a smile on his face while Troy was gripped with unease and fear. What's wrong, Mr. Troy? Olivia went up to him and asked when she saw the mixed emotions on his face. You were right, Dr. Fordham. Brandon Simmons isn't the only suspicious person. There are probably quite a few traitors in the family. So many of our enemies are starting to show themselves after Grandpa's death. Chapter 1573. Olivia handed Troy a glass of water to try and calm him down. I don't really understand what's going on. Can you tell me about the traitors you mentioned? That guy who just walked away is Graham Fordham. He's working in the entertainment industry. He's Uncle Henley's youngest son. Garrett, who died a while back, is his brother. Avery had never suspected anyone in the family for the longest time because he thought we were all bound by blood. He thought it was only natural for all of us to work toward building the family up. Who in their right mind would bring ruin to their own family? I never expected them to harbor such malice toward us. Olivia was confused. Why would Mr. David treat his children unfairly? It's just how it is with the older generation. They just dote on the first son. Dad was Grandpa's first child. That was why he loved Dad to the point of spoiling him. His love even extended to Dad's children. Every time our cousins tried to compete for things with us, Grandpa would be more biased toward us. This bias caused hatred to fester in their hearts. Olivia looked at Troy's saddened expression and said, maybe there are also grudges that we don't know about. But I think Graham might not be the one plotting against the Fordham family. Why? No actual bad guy would tell you that he's a bad guy. Besides, the culprit has plotted for around 2 decades. They're very patient and cunning. They've been destroying the Fordham family slowly but surely. The most vicious dogs are those that don't bark. That makes sense. Then, Olivia gave him a mysterious look. It doesn't matter if we want or not. We're already pieces on the board. The game has already begun. Troy was able to calm down after talking to Olivia. What do you and Avery have planned? You don't need to do anything, Mr. Troy. Just stay on the sidelines and observe. The enemy should be revealing themselves soon. The sun had set, but the Fordham residence was still very lively. Everyone was curious to see who would take charge of the family after Douglas's passing. The Fordhams had accumulated their wealth for over a century. It was a very massive fortune. Douglas's death was very sudden. He probably died before he had the chance to leave behind a will. Things were getting very interesting. Jacqueline spaced out as she looked at the moon. "Why are you hiding here? Everyone's here at this hour. It's your chance to show them what you're capable of," Alexander said as he hugged her from behind. "He was actually quite good to me," Jacqueline muttered. "When I was young, he told me I was the princess of the Fordham family and that he would keep me safe for as long as he lived. He did exactly that, but we're already at this stage of the plan. Are you regretting it now? Don't forget about the suffering that Miss Trudy went through." "I didn't forget. Jacqueline lowered her voice. "I just got a little emotional. I stayed with the Fordham family for many years. Now that the end is approaching, I can't help but feel a little sentimental." Alexander grabbed her shoulders and turned her around. "Jacqueline, don't be naive. Are you really regretting everything when we're already at this stage? Don't forget the things you've done to them. If they ever find out, you'll be doomed. Those brothers who love you so much won't hesitate to kill you." "I know. So, don't feel any regret. Just move forward resolutely. We're at a point of no return. We'll be victorious when we reach the end of the road. We're so close to victory." Jacqueline suppressed the complicated emotions she was feeling. "Let's head back and finish this." Chapter 1574. There was a sending-off ceremony for family members of the deceased at night in Zelatria. Olivia hid in the crowd as she looked at the members of the Fordham family. Other than Douglas's offspring, there were also the offspring of his brothers and other branch families. The Fordhams were a huge family. The ceremony was about to begin. David was supposed to be the one to pay his respects first, but since he had already passed, Henley was the one to do it instead. Everyone else went to take a flower of their own. Troy and Sean were wheelchair-bound. So, Jacqueline suggested that she would get the flowers for them. Before she could reach out to get the flowers, someone grabbed her wrist. Graham said, "This ceremony is for family members only. I'm afraid you don't have the right to participate." As soon as he said that, Troy snapped back, "Enough is enough, Graham. We're mourning Grandpa right now. How dare you do this right before him? Do you really want to cause him more trouble even after he's dead?" Troy didn't mind the minor spats they had before. But there were a lot of outsiders present that night. That wasn't the place for Graham to be spewing nonsense. Sean had become calm. No matter how ignorant Graham was, he shouldn't be causing a scene at a time like this. Moreover, Graham worked in the entertainment industry. He should know the gravity of such a situation. He had to be well prepared if he was acting so arrogantly. Sean looked at Henley, who had just suffered the loss of a child. He looked a little frail. Garrett's body had been dug out. His son had died for so long. How could he not be sad to send his son off? That was why he didn't say anything to stop Graham. His eyes were soulless, and he was completely spaced out. Instead, Henley's wife, Aubrey Good, took a step forward and said, "Please calm down, Troy. Besides, Graham isn't wrong. It's not only Jacqueline. You and Sean don't have the right to pay respects to Dad either." Jacqueline had always been very docile when she was with her elders, but even her expression changed at this moment. "What are you saying, Aunt Aubrey? Even if my dad and Avery aren't here, we're still Grandpa's family. Why don't we have the right to pay our respects to him?" "Why?" Graham sneered. The mockery in his expression was clear. "Are you acting dumb or do you really not know the truth? You're all so shameless. Graham, if you have an issue with me, we can talk it out in private. Do you have to cause a scene right here and now? Aunt Aubrey, he's young and clueless, sure. But are you really so ignorant as well? Why are you allowing him to run his mouth and bring shame to the family? Grandpa cared about the family the most when he was alive. Oh, wow, you keep talking about the family. How nice of you, but I'm going to talk about it right here and now. I want everyone to know how shameless the lot of you are. You've lied to all of us for so many years. The crowd heard Graham's words and knew that a massive secret was about to be revealed. Some of them had the urge to get some popcorn to watch whatever was about to happen. A prestigious family like the Fordhams usually kept their private matters to themselves. Now that they had decided to reveal their secrets, it was sure to be something big. Olivia didn't see this coming. She felt like whatever Graham was going to say wouldn't be good. Someone in the crowd squeezed her hand. She looked and saw that Ethan had already appeared next to her. He felt the sweat on her palms. "Don't worry. For some reason, I feel like this is going to be something really big." She met Ethan's gaze and saw that he looked like he knew what was going to happen. "Do you know something?" Before Ethan could speak, Graham had already started talking. "I'll tell everyone the reason why you don't have the right to pay respects to Grandpa. It's because you're not actually Fordham's. Your father is not Grandpa's son." Chapter 1575. What nonsense are you saying? Troy's face was flushed with rage. If his hands weren't injured, he would have already slapped Graham. Jacqueline and Alexander looked at each other. The two of them were also thrown for a loop. Olivia turned to look at Ethan. "What's going on? Is he telling the truth?" Ethan said softly, "Olivia, I just got the news too. Look at who this is." Ethan showed her a photo on his phone. It was a photo of a woman with a great figure in her 30s. Olivia immediately knew who the woman was when she saw the mole under the corner of her eye. "It's Natalie." The photo was different from the black and white photos she had seen before. It was a colored photo, and the image was very clear. Although it wasn't as high definition as photos taken by modern devices, it was still better than the old photos. "That's right," Olivia asked excitedly, "have you found her?" Ethan gazed at the Fordhams and said, "Perhaps they'll reveal the answer to your question." Graham's words sent shockwaves into the crowd. "What's going on? Is Mr. Graham joking about this?" "I don't think so. No one would be stupid enough to joke about something like that in this situation. I think there are a lot of things we don't yet know about the Fordham family. Seems like things will be getting more interesting." Jacqueline composed herself and said, "Graham, I know there are some misunderstandings between you and Troy, but this is not the time for jokes. We should get on with Grandpa's ceremony and stop wasting time." "Grandpa, shut up. What right do you have to call him your grandpa?" "That's enough, Graham. Don't you think your joke has gone too far? You bastards are the ones who have gone too far." Graham clapped his hands. Someone had already prepared a projector in advance. "Everyone, I'm sorry I have to reveal this information under these circumstances. But I really want you all to be witnesses. The Fordham family will be weeding out the imposters so that certain people can no longer stay in the family shamelessly. Mr. Graham, what is the Fordham family hiding? Please tell us now." "Graham, you claim that we're not Fordhams. Do you have any proof?" Troy asked as he suppressed his anger. "Don't worry. Naturally, I made these claims because I have proof." The photo of a woman appeared on the screen. The woman resembled Olivia a lot. Even if it was a blurry, old photo, it was still clear that the woman was very pretty. "This is my grandma, Natalia Bardan. It was rumored that Douglas used to be a ruffian in the past and was very influential on both sides of the law. He was also a prominent figure in Zealotria who was feared by many. Suddenly, he changed his attitude and was no longer full of bloodlust. It was said that he became well-behaved because he had a wife, who had become his weakness. Many people wanted to know what kind of woman could tame a feral man like him. The woman had always been shrouded in mystery. The people only knew that Douglas loved his wife a lot. How much did he love his wife? He didn't let her show herself publicly. Other than the Fordhams, no one knew what Natalia looked like. Some people said Natalia was a witch who had charmed Douglas. But it was clear from the photo that she wasn't a witch but a gorgeous woman. "Why are you showing Grandma's photo? You know that Grandpa didn't like it when other people saw Grandma. Do you know why? It was because she was married once before she became his wife. She even had a child with her ex-husband." "That's right. Your father is that very child. He isn't Grandpa's son." Chapter 1576. Sean and Troy looked at each other. The confusion was clear in their eyes. They didn't know anything about this. Even Jacqueline thought it was an outlandish tale. Sean, Troy, did you know about this? Both of them shook their heads. I've never heard Dad talk about this before. Jacqueline's plan was at its final stage, but something like this had to happen today. She wasn't about to let other people affect her plan. How can a photo prove anything? Both Dad and Grandpa have passed away. Dad died in a plane crash, and his remains are nowhere to be found. Without the possibility of a DNA test, what other proof can you provide? This is a blood test that Grandpa and Grandma did when they were alive. Both of them had type O blood. According to Mendel's genetic law, two people with type O blood can only give birth to a baby with type O blood. Your father has type B blood. The chances of a mutation happening are incredibly slim. Do you think your father would be the exception? Graham showed a different photo on the screen. Let's set the issue of blood type aside for now. These are photos of Grandpa's sons. My dad, Uncle Emery, and Uncle Sawyer resemble Grandpa. Your father is the only person to not look like Grandpa at all. Olivia had never seen David in person before. She was dumbfounded when she saw his photo on the screen. She grabbed Ethan's hand in excitement. Doesn't he look familiar? Familiar. It's like they're the same person. They were the only ones who knew what they were talking about. David looked a lot like Mason. Mason was quite old, but people close to him had seen photos of him when he was younger. David was like a carbon copy of him. Could he be? Tears welled up in Olivia's eyes. The truth she had been searching for just appeared before her eyes. She was not prepared for it. Mason mentioned that Natalie was his one true love. The photo she found showed Natalie with a young boy. Calculating by their age, the boy was Mason's son. According to calculations, David's age should be close to the boy's. He was the son Mason had been searching for. That meant David was Olivia's father while Shayna was her mother. Olivia was so worked up that her entire body was trembling. Ethan could feel her excitement. He would have hugged her if they weren't in public. Luckily, everyone's attention was focused on the Fordhams. No one noticed Olivia's abnormal reaction. Her heart was pounding really hard, like it was going to jump out of her chest at any moment. Fate had played a cruel prank on her. No wonder she felt so drawn to Shayna when they first met. It was no wonder that the dimple on Connor's cheek was on the exact spot where Avery had his dimple. Why didn't she notice such an obvious clue earlier? She had actually missed the chance to reunite with her mother. She went through so much to uncover the truth, but David had already passed away. Shayna's eyes were blinded with poison, and she had gone missing. Olivia could no longer stop her tears from flowing. Some of her siblings were dead, and others were severely injured. Even the grandmother she had always wanted to meet had already passed away. Fate was so cruel to her. Ethan took her away when he noticed that she was about to break down emotionally. When they got to the yard where no one else was around, Olivia jumped into Ethan's arms. Her tears stained his suit. Why did things come to this? Don't worry, Liv, you still have me and the kids. Chapter 1577. The huge secret that Graham revealed shocked the Fordhams, but it was also very devastating to Olivia. She had spent so much time looking for her family, but she found them at a time when she least expected it. In the past, she lamented how hard the Fordhams' situation was. When she realized that they were her family, she felt as if a knife had been stabbed into her chest. Olivia slowly slid out of Ethan's embrace until she slumped to the ground, tears still flowing. Dad, Mom, and my brothers. Another hard pill for her to swallow was the fact that the body she had found was actually her sister. Quinn died such a horrible death, but she didn't know about it. She didn't even get to attend Quinn's funeral. The shock was too great for her to bear. So, she passed out. Liv. Ethan carried Olivia in his arms and left in a hurry. Ethan felt pained as he looked at Olivia, who was lying on the bed with her brows furrowed. She had already suffered a lot. He didn't expect the family she was searching for to be in such a terrible state. Willow stayed by her side with a concerned expression. Ethan said gently, Mom is fine. She's just too tired. She fainted because of shock. The ridiculous farce back at the Fordham residence was still going on. The sending-off ceremony for Douglas had become the stage for the Fordhams to argue with each other. Graham seemed to be at an advantage, but he was still causing the family's reputation to take a hit. Jacqueline was panicking. She drove to an ancient villa before daybreak. There was a murder of crows perched on top of the villa. Their cawing made the dark atmosphere even creepier. There were some rose bushes growing on the dilapidated walls, which brought some life to the seemingly desolate place. Dawn was approaching. The sunlight cut through the darkness and shed some light on the desolate location. The sound of a lonely piano piece rang through the empty villa as Jacqueline rushed up the stairs with an anxious look on her face. She opened the door to the rooftop with a loud bang. A woman sat before the piano, her silhouette looking very lonely. The wind blew at Jacqueline's hair. "Mom, some changes to the situation are affecting our plans." The woman played the final note of the piece before turning around slowly, revealing her face that had been damaged by acid. Even though Jacqueline had seen the woman's face countless times over the years, she still couldn't get over how horrifying it looked. The woman could see the fear in Jacqueline's eyes right away. She grunted and asked, "What happened?" Everything was going according to plan. The Fordham family was in shambles. Some were dead while others were heavily injured. They were a mess. But I didn't expect David not to be Douglas's biological son. Now that Douglas is dead, the others want to drive us out of the family. If this happens, our plans will be completely ruined. Jacqueline had already plotted to destroy the Fordhams from within. That way, she would be the only person who could take control of the family. The family's massive fortune would have been hers for the taking. But the revelation that David wasn't Douglas's son came out of nowhere. If David weren't Douglas's son, it would mean none of David's offspring were actually Fordhams. How could she compete for the family's fortune like that? The woman smashed her fist on the piano. She narrowed her eyes. It must be Brandon. That bastard put one over us. Mom, what do we do now? Those idiots won't even let us go to Douglas's funeral. We definitely won't get a cut of the family's fortune. When the lawyers get involved, we'll lose all the assets we have now. Chapter 1578. The woman rubbed her temples. Go back first. I'll think of something. Don't draw any suspicion to yourself. All right. Jacqueline suddenly thought about something. By the way, how's Dad? The woman's expression changed drastically. She sneered. He's a stubborn man. I plan to inflict the pain he caused me back to him 1,000-fold. A pained expression flashed on Jacqueline's face. Mom, why don't we stop this? We've already ruined his family over the years. It should be enough. Enough. In your dreams. He deserves this. The woman grabbed Jacqueline's collar. I'm warning you. I'm your mother. I won't forgive you if you dare change your mind about our plans. Mom, I know that. I'm your daughter. I'll definitely be on your side. Jacqueline broke free from the woman's grasp and looked at her with some fear in her eyes. The woman had been emotionally unstable all these years. She could have gotten her face fixed, but her obsession ran too deep. She said she wanted to remember the pain it caused her, and she planned to pay it back 1,000 times over. She had been plotting all her life. In Jacqueline's opinion, the woman wouldn't feel joy even if she managed to exact her revenge. The Fordham family was in turmoil, so Jacqueline headed home hastily. After she left, the woman got up and hobbled toward the basement. The door to the basement was tightly shut. She scanned her fingerprint, and the door slowly opened. Then, she slowly walked into the basement. There was a man with his limbs chained down in the dark and damp basement. His head was drooping, and it looked like he was already dead. She approached him with a feverish obsession in her eyes. David, do you know how long I've waited for this? The man slowly raised his head when he heard her voice. He hadn't gotten anything to drink for the past 2 days, so his lips were chapped. He looked like he was in his 40s or 50s. There were some wrinkles on his face. Time had left its mark on his face, but he didn't look old or worn. Instead, there was a unique masculine charm to him. He gazed at the woman coldly with his dark pupils. I should have known it was you, Deborah. I shouldn't have listened to Shayna and allowed you to live. You've ruined my family, you witch. The woman, Deborah Johnson, tilted his chin and forced him to look at her. What, do you think I'm ugly now? I wouldn't have ended up like this if not for you. Do you even know how I survived all these years? Even now, you're still completely unrepentant. You were the one who caused all the harm to yourself. If you hadn't tried to splash acid on Shayna's face, you wouldn't have burned your face like this. So many years have passed, but you're still the same as before. In fact, you might have gotten worse. You're disgusting. Deborah gave him a resounding slap. Shut up. I was the one who met you first. Why didn't you love me? Why did it have to be that bitch, Shayna? Her face already looked terrifying with the acid burns, but it looked even scarier when contorted with anger. So, you did all these atrocious things because I don't love you. You're my children's aunt. How could you hurt them? My daughter wasn't even 25 years old when she died. You're a demon. David was overcome with sorrow when he said that. Deborah burst out in laughter. She laughed so hard that she started to tear up. So what? I swore I would destroy your family back then and that you would spend the rest of your life in pain and regret. I'll never forgive you. You'll never be rid of me for the rest of your life. Chapter 1579. David looked at the crazed woman before him. Deborah, it's been so many years. Have you ever felt joy? What have you gotten from all this plotting? In the end, it's a lose-lose situation. You're wrong. I was disfigured, disowned, and driven out of my family. I lost everything. Why should Shayna have everything? She was just a country bumpkin. How could she take my place? I might have lost, but you don't get to celebrate my defeat. A lose-lose situation is a win in my books. She looked down at David. Look at you now. You're beaten and battered. You look pitiful. I'll have you know that this is just the beginning. Soon, the entire Fordham family will be destroyed. I will destroy you and the Fordham family. You really have lost your mind. Yes, I've lost my mind. I lost my mind because of you. David, it's time you experience the pain I felt. Do you know that Shayna, the woman you care so much about, has become Brandon's woman now? Does it hurt? Oh, right. You don't know yet, right? That old geezer, Douglas, is dead as well. Soon, you and your sons will follow suit. Deborah, you're a heartless wretch. Due to David's excessive struggle, the iron chains clanked incessantly. Deborah held his chin and smiled. What? Don't you want that? Why don't you beg me for mercy? I might consider giving them a swift and painless end if you do so. Dream on. David sneered. I'd rather die than beg you for mercy. Don't worry. I won't let you die. How would you witness the death of your loved ones if you're dead? All of your children will die painful deaths. As for the love of your life, she's blind, and she'll be another man's plaything for the rest of her life. She'll never escape. The insanity in Deborah's eyes grew as the smile on her face became wider. It was a very unsettling expression. Someone brought food over. Deborah tried to feed David, but he turned his head to the side. Not eating, are you? Fine, let's see how long you can last. Deborah left after she said that. The basement was shrouded in darkness again. It had been 2 days, but Troy still hadn't found him. There was probably a signal jammer somewhere. He had to find a way to send a message out. In the afternoon, Deborah received news that something had happened to David. She rushed back to the basement and saw blood everywhere. David had smashed a bowl and used a broken piece to cut himself. Deborah tilted his chin and looked at his pale face. Do you really want to die so badly? I won't let you get what you want. Men, take him to dress his wounds. David lost a lot of blood, but he was still somewhat conscious. He knew his chance had come. Sean would be able to find him once he left the basement. Bryce rushed over. Mr. Fordham, we've tracked down Mr. David's location. Sean had been keeping himself hidden. It was all just a show he and David had put up since the beginning. It was a desperate attempt to lure out the mastermind. But the incident during the ceremony was something he didn't expect. The Fordham family was in turmoil. He couldn't show himself yet. After all, his siblings were still in danger as long as the culprit wasn't found. He could only stay put and hope that David was safe. Where is he? He was so excited that he stood up straight. He's in an abandoned villa in the suburban area. Sean's hands were trembling with excitement as he dialed Olivia's number. Olivia, we've found him. Chapter 1580. Olivia revealed her and Avery's plan to Troy when he was involved in an accident to comfort him. Avery and Troy acted together. Avery hid in the dark to not attract attention while Troy showed himself. David ran an investigation within a scope, and every clue led him to suspect Deborah. He volunteered to be the bait to lure her out. Avery lost contact with David after the plane crash, after which he spent days worrying about David. Fortunately, Avery managed to track David's whereabouts. Avery shared the news with Olivia immediately. That was when Olivia knew her true identity. It was mind-blowing, and she had mixed feelings about it. Emotions churned in her, but she couldn't say a word. "What's wrong, Olivia?" asked Troy as he received zero response from her. "Did something happen?" She tried to hold herself together. "No, I'm just..." Her choking voice worried him more. "You don't have to hide anything from me. We're your god brothers, we're a family. Even if many things are happening to the family, I can still protect you." Those comforting words warmed her heart. Although Troy was oblivious to her true identity, he treated her with kindness. Perhaps that was the inherent connection a family would have. However, everything transpired so suddenly. Olivia had one question left unanswered: why did the Fordhams not know about her existence? According to the information Olivia had, Shayna's health deteriorated due to blood loss after giving birth to the sixth child. At that time, the family still didn't know that she was barren. Quinn passed away. Only Jacqueline's birthday was close to Olivia's, so Olivia could confirm that she was one of the Fordhams. In other words, Olivia was the sixth child, not Jacqueline. Before this, Olivia had given a thought regarding Jacqueline's motive. Why would Jacqueline do this when the Fordhams treated her so well? At the end of the day, it turned out that Jacqueline wasn't the sixth child of the family. She had a motive to commit all of these. However, others weren't aware of this. The Fordham family was in total havoc, so Olivia didn't tell them the truth. "Thank you, Troy." The idea of them being a family finally settled in Olivia. "I'm fine. Let's proceed according to the plan. What should we do next?" "Avery brought his men over there. He asked me to tell you this so that you can be mentally prepared in case of emergencies. Wait for our good news." "Okay, tell him to be careful. The enemy has planned this for a long time. They're no ordinary people." She terminated the call. Her heart was racing as she recalled whatever that had happened to her. Toxic Hive switched Olivia and Jacqueline. Jacqueline was the one who wanted Olivia dead this entire time. An incoming call interrupted her train of thought. "Hey, it was an old acquaintance, Warren." "Olivia, you have to be careful. I found out who wants you dead. It's Miss Jacqueline Fordham."